Rain poured relentlessly over Ashwood, Oregon, a small town tucked between rolling hills and whispering pines. The streets glistened under the dim glow of streetlights, reflecting the kind of quiet beauty that only came with a storm. Inside a cozy little coffee shop on Main Street, Grace Delaney wiped down the counter for the third time that evening. Her hands moved with a rhythm born of habit, but her mind was elsewhere. At 28, Grace carried the weight of the world in her soft brown eyes, eyes that held both strength and a quiet sorrow. She adjusted the jade heart necklace resting against her collarbone, a keepsake from her late mother, and sighed. It was more than jewelry to her. It was a promise of better days. Across town, the storm rattled the windows of a grand office building, the new Ashwood branch of Grayson Enterprises. Thomas Grayson stood at the top floor, staring out at the rain-soaked world below. At 35, he was the picture of success, a tall man with sharp features, softened by a warmth he rarely showed. His dark hair was neatly combed, his suit impeccably tailored, but tonight, his thoughts drifted to a memory he couldn't quite grasp, a night of rain, a stranger's kindness, and a fleeting glimpse of something unforgettable. He touched the edge of his desk, where a small photo of his wife, Rachel Monroe, sat. She smiled in the frame, but the smile never reached her eyes. Back at the coffee shop, Grace glanced at the clock. 9:30. Her shift was almost over, and she could get home to Samuel, her 5-year-old son. Sam was her everything, a bright little boy with her brown curls and a laugh that could light up the darkest days. But lately, that light had dimmed. Sam had been born with a heart defect, a condition that drained her savings and kept her awake at night. The doctor said he needed surgery soon, a procedure that cost $300,000. Grace didn't have that kind of money. She barely had enough to keep the lights on in their tiny apartment. 5 years ago, Grace's life had taken a turn she never expected. She remembered it clearly, the night that changed everything. It was another storm, much like this one, fierce and unforgiving. She had been 23, working odd jobs, when she found a man slumped against a wall near the old Ashwood Inn. He was soaked, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, his expensive coat torn. Grace didn't hesitate. She dragged him inside, used her scarf to stop the bleeding, and stayed until he stirred. In the dim light of the lobby, he opened his eyes, green and piercing, and murmured something she couldn't catch. As she adjusted his coat, her sleeve slipped, revealing the birthmark on her shoulder, a delicate shape like a bird's wing. He reached for it, his fingers trembling, and whispered, "I'll find you." But Grace panicked. He was clearly someone important, someone she didn't belong near. When he fell back asleep, she fled into the night, leaving Ashwood the next morning to start over somewhere else. She didn't know his name. She didn't want trouble. Now, years later, Grace was back in Ashwood, drawn by cheaper rent and a desperate need for stability. She didn't know the man she saved had become Thomas Grayson, CEO of a company that employed half the town. She didn't know he'd spent months searching for her, haunted by the memory of her kindness, only to give up when the trail went cold. And she certainly didn't know that Rachel Monroe, her childhood best friend, had betrayed her that same year. Rachel had been at Grace's apartment the day after the storm, nursing a grudge over her own stalled life. When Grace packed to leave, Rachel spotted the jade necklace on the table, a gift Grace had shown her once. She took it, slipped it into her pocket, and later used it to spin a lie. She told Thomas she was the one who saved him, presenting the necklace as proof. Thomas, dazed from his injury and grateful beyond words, believed her. They married within a year. Tonight, Grace's world shifted again. Her phone buzzed as she locked up the coffee shop, the rain drumming against the awning. It was Dr. Ellis, Sam's cardiologist. "Grace, I need you to come in tomorrow," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Sam's condition is worsening. We've got a month, maybe less, before he needs that surgery. $300,000. I know it's a lot, but we can't wait." Grace's knees buckled. She leaned against the door, the cold glass pressing into her back. $300,000. She could work 10 lifetimes and not have that. But she couldn't lose Sam. He was her heart, her reason to keep going. Thomas, meanwhile, stood in his office watching the storm. The rain always brought back that night, the stranger who saved him. He didn't know why it mattered so much, why he couldn't let it go. Rachel had been his rock, or so he thought. She wore the jade necklace he'd come to associate with his rescue, a symbol of their bond. But lately he felt a distance between them, a coldness he couldn't name. His company's new branch in Ashwood was a fresh start, a chance to build something meaningful. He didn't expect it to bring him closer to a past he'd buried. Grace walked home through the rain, her thin jacket soaked through. She passed the glowing sign of Grayson Enterprises, its sleek building a stark contrast to her worn-out world. A flyer fluttered on a lamppost, caught in the wind. Now hiring cleaning staff, Grayson Enterprises, apply within. She stopped, rain dripping from her hair. Cleaning wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than the coffee shop. If she took a second job, maybe, just maybe, she could scrape together enough for Sam's surgery. She pulled the flyer down, folded it into her pocket, and made a decision. Tomorrow, she'd apply. Tomorrow, she'd fight harder. Inside her apartment, Grace peeked into Sam's room. He slept soundly, his small chest rising and falling, a teddy bear clutched in his arms. She brushed a curl from his forehead, whispering, "I'll fix this, Sam, I promise." The jade necklace gleamed faintly in the lamplight, a quiet reminder of her mother's words. "Hold on to hope, Grace. It'll carry you through." She didn't know that hope was about to lead her straight into Thomas Grayson's world, a world where past promises and present dreams would collide. Thomas turned away from his office window, the rain a steady hum in his ears. He didn't know why he felt restless, why the storm stirred something deep inside him. But as he locked his office door and headed home to Rachel, he couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was waiting for him in Ashwood. Someone he'd promised to find. The rain had stopped by morning in Ashwood, Oregon, leaving the streets slick and the air heavy with the scent of wet pine. Grace Delaney stood outside Grayson Enterprises, clutching the crumpled flyer she'd pulled from the lamppost the night before. Her heart thudded as she smoothed her damp hair and adjusted her faded jacket. She hadn't slept much, Dr. Ellis's words echoing in her mind. $300,000. 1 month. She glanced at the photo of Samuel on her phone, his sleepy smile giving her courage. Today was a school holiday, closed due to storm damage, so Sam trailed behind her, his small hand in hers. "Mommy, why are we here?" he asked, his voice soft but curious. Grace knelt to his level, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Mommy's getting a new job, Sam, so we can fix your heart." He nodded, trusting her completely, and she stood, leading him inside. The lobby of Grayson Enterprises gleamed with polished marble and glass, a world so different from Grace's own. She felt out of place, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the floor. Sam clung to her side, wide-eyed at the towering ceiling. At the reception desk, a young woman with a crisp smile handed Grace a form. "Cleaning staff, right? Fill this out. We'll call you up soon." Grace nodded, grateful for the chance. She sat Sam on a plush chair, handing him a crayon and a scrap of paper. "Draw something nice, okay? Mommy won't be long." Sam grinned, starting a sketch of a starry sky. Upstairs, Thomas Grayson reviewed reports in his new office, the Ashwood branch, a project he'd fought hard to bring to life. He liked the quiet of this town, the way it felt untouched by the chaos of the city. His assistant knocked, a stack of hiring forms in hand. "New cleaning staff applications, sir. Want to take a look?" Thomas waved it off. "Just hire who's qualified, I trust you." But as he spoke, his gaze drifted to the window, the overcast sky stirring that old memory again. Rain. A stranger's voice. A birthmark like a wing. He rubbed his temple, pushing the thought away. Rachel hated when he dwelled on the past. She'd say, "I'm your future, Thomas. Let it go." And he had. Mostly. Grace finished her interview quickly, the supervisor impressed by her quiet determination. "You start tomorrow night," he said. $10 an hour, double shifts if you want them." She thanked him, her mind racing. Double shifts could mean real money, a step closer to saving Sam. As she gathered Sam to leave, he tugged her sleeve. "Look, Mommy!" He held up his drawing, a family under a starry sky. "That's you, me, and Daddy up there." Grace's throat tightened. She'd told Sam his father was a star, a gentle lie to soften the truth she didn't know herself. "It's beautiful, Sam," she whispered, kissing his head. They stepped into the hall just as Thomas descended the stairs. Their eyes met for a split second, Grace's soft brown locking with Thomas's sharp green. He froze mid-step, a jolt of recognition he couldn't place. She looked tired, her face framed by damp curls, but there was something in her gaze, a quiet fire that tugged at him. Sam waved shyly, and Thomas offered a small smile before Grace hurried away, her heart pounding. She didn't know who he was. She couldn't. Thomas watched her go, then shook his head. Just a new hire, he told himself. Nothing more. That night, Grace started her shift, mopping the floors of the sprawling office building. Sam stayed home with a neighbor, a kind older woman who watched him for free. Grace worked in silence, the hum of the vacuum her only company. Thomas stayed late too, finalizing plans for the branch opening. He wandered the halls, restless, and spotted Grace near the break room. She didn't notice him, focused on her task, but he lingered, struck by her grace under exhaustion. On impulse, he called his assistant the next day. "That new cleaner, the one with the brown hair? Double her pay, she works hard." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, that's not protocol." Thomas cut him off. "Just do it." He didn't know why it mattered, only that it did. Across town, Rachel Monroe sat in her lavish home, a glass of wine in hand. At 30, she was striking, with sleek blonde hair and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She'd built this life with Thomas, a life of wealth and status, and she guarded it fiercely. Henry Monroe, their 5-year-old son, played nearby, his toys scattered across the marble floor. Rachel had raised him like a prince, dressing him in designer clothes, teaching him the world belonged to him. She glanced at the jade necklace around her neck, the one she'd stolen from Grace years ago. It was her ticket to this life, her proof she'd saved Thomas. She'd never let it go. But trouble brewed. Rachel's assistant called that afternoon. "Mrs. Monroe, there's a new cleaner at the branch. Grace Delaney. I thought you'd want to know." Rachel's grip tightened on the phone. Grace. Her old friend. The one she'd betrayed. The one whose necklace she wore. "What's she doing there?" she snapped. "Just cleaning, ma'am." But Mr. Grayson raised her pay himself. Rachel's jaw clenched. Thomas never meddled in hiring. Why now? She hung up, her mind racing. Grace couldn't stay. If Thomas saw her, if he remembered, everything she'd built could crumble. The next day, Grace brought Sam to work again. Another storm had flooded the school and she had no choice. He sat in a corner of the break room, drawing quietly. Thomas, on a routine walkthrough, paused when he saw the boy. Sam looked up, holding out his latest sketch. "Mister, want to see?" Thomas took it, a family under stars, the same as before. "Who's this?" he asked, pointing to the figure labeled Daddy. Sam grinned. "He's a star. Mommy says he watches us." Thomas felt a pang, a memory stirring. He handed the drawing back, his voice soft. "It's really good, kid." Grace appeared then, flustered. "Sam, don't bother the boss." She grabbed his hand, avoiding Thomas's gaze, and rushed out. But Thomas followed, catching her at the elevator. "Wait, your son dropped this." He held out the crayons Sam had left behind. Grace took it, her fingers brushing his. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes meeting his again. That fire, that familiarity. Thomas watched her go, a question forming he couldn't yet ask. That night, Thomas dreamed of the storm again. Rain pounded the inn, and a woman leaned over him, her voice soothing. Her sleeve slipped, revealing a birthmark, a wing against pale skin. He woke with a start, heart racing. Rachel slept beside him, the jade necklace glinting in the moonlight. He touched it, frowning. "Where'd you get this again?" he asked the next morning. Rachel smiled. "Too smooth. You gave it to me, silly. After I saved you." Thomas nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. The woman in his dream didn't sound like Rachel. Her eyes were different, warmer. Rachel wasted no time. She called the branch supervisor. "That new cleaner, Grace Delaney. She's trouble. Say she lost something, anything. Get her out." The supervisor hesitated. "Mr. Grayson likes her work." Rachel's voice turned icy. "Do it, or I'll have your job." She hung up, staring at Henry as he played. She'd stolen Grace's life once. She could do it again. Grace couldn't take Thomas from her. Not now, not ever. Grace, oblivious, kept working, her pay raise a small lifeline. She didn't know Thomas watched her from afar, drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. She didn't know Rachel's plan was closing in. And she didn't know that Sam's innocent words, "Daddy's a star," had planted a seed in Thomas's heart, a seed that would soon bloom into truth. The days in Ashwood, Oregon grew shorter as autumn settled in, the air crisp with the promise of change. Grace Delaney moved through her double shifts at Grayson Enterprises with a quiet resolve, her hands steady as she scrubbed floors and polished desks. Every extra dollar went into a jar labeled Sam's Heart, hidden under her kitchen sink. She didn't know Thomas Grayson watched her sometimes, his green eyes tracing her movements from a distance. She didn't know Rachel Monroe's plan to push her out was gaining speed. And she didn't know that fate was about to deal her a hand she couldn't refuse. One chilly afternoon, Grace's phone buzzed mid-shift. She stepped into the break room, wiping her hands on her apron, and answered. It was Dr. Ellis, his voice urgent. "Grace, good news. We've found a donor heart for Sam. It's a match, but we need to act fast. 1 month tops to get the funds and paperwork done. $300,000. Grace's breath caught. A heart for Sam. Hope. Real and tangible after years of waiting. "I'll find a way," she said, her voice trembling with determination. "Thank you, doctor." She hung up, leaning against the wall, tears welling. 1 month. She could do this. She had to. Thomas, meanwhile, sat in his office, staring at a report he couldn't focus on. Grace lingered in his thoughts, her quiet strength, the way she'd looked at him when their hands brushed. And Sam, that little boy with the starry drawings, something about them pulled at him, a thread he couldn't untangle. His assistant knocked, breaking his reverie. "Sir, Mrs. Monroe called. She's upset about the new cleaner, wants her gone." Thomas frowned. "Grace? Why?" The assistant shrugged. "Didn't say, just sounded mad." Thomas waved it off. "Tell Rachel, I'll handle it." But he didn't call her. Instead, he walked the halls, hoping to see Grace again, to figure out why she mattered. Rachel paced her pristine living room, Henry playing with a toy car nearby. She'd heard about Grace's persistence, her growing presence at the company, and now Thomas was asking questions about the necklace. She touched the jade heart at her throat, her lifeline to this life. If Grace stayed, if Thomas remembered, it was over. She called the supervisor again. "Make it happen. Say she stole something. I don't care what. Just get her out," the supervisor protested. "Mr. Grayson doubled her pay. He likes her." Rachel's voice turned sharp. "Then find a way around him. Do it." She hung up, her mind racing. She'd protect her world no matter the cost. That night, Grace brought Sam to work again. The school's flood damage lingered, and her neighbor was unwell. He sat in the break room, coloring while she cleaned. Thomas spotted them during a late walk-through, pausing at the door. "Hey, Sam," he said, crouching to his level. "What's this one?" Sam beamed, holding up a sketch of a heart with wings. "It's my heart, flying to find Daddy." Thomas smiled, a pang in his chest. "It's perfect." Grace appeared, flustered. "Sam, don't bother him." Thomas stood, meeting her eyes. "He's no bother. You're doing a good job here, Grace." She blushed, murmuring thanks, and hurried Sam away. Thomas watched them go, that thread tugging harder. The next day, everything changed. Grace got a call from Dr. Ellis at the coffee shop. "Grace, there's a problem. Another patient needs the heart too. The hospital's deciding who gets it." Her stomach dropped. "Who?" she asked. "Henry Monroe," Dr. Ellis said. "Thomas Grayson's son. His wife's pushing hard." Grace froze. Thomas's son? Rachel's son. She thanked the doctor and hung up, her mind spinning. She didn't know Rachel had exaggerated Henry's condition, claiming a minor issue was life-threatening to keep Thomas close. Rachel met with the hospital board that afternoon, her voice smooth and commanding. "Henry needs this heart. We'll cover all costs. Make it happen." The board hesitated, but her influence, backed by Grayson Enterprises, loomed large. Grace worked her shift in a daze, fear gnawing at her. That night, Rachel appeared at the branch, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She cornered Grace in the supply closet, her eyes cold. "I know about the heart, Grace. Henry's getting it. But I'm fair. Sign it over and I'll give you $300,000. You can find another for Sam." Grace stared, stunned. "You're buying my son's life," Rachel smirked. "I'm saving mine. Take the deal or you'll lose everything." Grace's hands shook. She thought of Sam, his weak heart, his trusting smile. 1 month. Could she find another heart in time? Tears stung her eyes as she whispered, "Okay, I'll sign." Rachel handed her the papers, triumphant. Grace signed, her heart breaking with every stroke. Thomas sensed something was off. He'd overheard Rachel on the phone, talking about Henry's heart. "He's not that sick," he muttered to himself. Henry ran around the house daily, full of energy. Thomas called his doctor friend, requesting DNA tests for Sam and Henry. "I need to know," he said. "Something's not right." Rachel caught wind of it and acted fast. She slipped a nurse $5,000 to delay the results. "Lose the samples for a week," she hissed. "I'll handle the rest." The nurse nodded, pocketing the cash. Thomas got a call later. "Sorry, sir, lab mix-up. Results will take time." He slammed the phone down, frustration mounting. Grace told Sam that night, sitting on his bed, "Your heart's coming soon, okay? We just have to wait a little longer." Sam nodded, his eyes heavy. "Mommy, don't be sad. If I don't get it, I'll be a star, right? Like Daddy?" Grace choked back a sob, hugging him tight. "You're not going anywhere, Sam, I promise." But doubt crept in. She prayed silently, begging for a miracle, while Thomas dug deeper into his past. He found an old photo from the Ashwood Inn, a blurry shot of the lobby. No faces, but the memory sharpened. A woman's voice, a birthmark. He called Rachel. "That night I got hurt. Tell me again how you found me." Rachel laughed, too quick. "I saw you by the inn, Thomas. Saved your life. You know this." He hung up, unconvinced. Rachel pushed forward, securing the heart for Henry. The hospital called Grace the next day. "It's official. Henry Monroe's getting the donor heart. We're sorry." Grace sank to the floor, the phone slipping from her hand. She'd given up Sam's chance for a promise she didn't trust. That night, Sam woke her, his voice small. "Mommy, my chest hurts." She rushed him to the hospital. Dr. Ellis meeting them at the door. "He's stable, Grace, but we're running out of time. 1 month, maybe less." Grace nodded, tears streaming. "I'll find a way," she whispered, clutching Sam's hand. Thomas dreamed again, clearer now. The woman's face blurred, but her birthmark stood out, a wing against her shoulder. He woke, staring at Rachel's necklace. It didn't fit. The woman in his dream didn't wear it. He grabbed his coat, heading to the branch. He needed to see Grace, to ask her something, anything. She was there, mopping the lobby, her face pale. "Grace," he said, stepping closer. "You okay?" She looked up, eyes red. "Just tired, sir." He hesitated, then asked, "Your son, Sam, how's he doing?" Her lip trembled. "He's sick, needs a heart, but it's gone now." Thomas's chest tightened. "Gone?" She nodded, turning away. He watched her, pieces falling into place, a truth he couldn't yet grasp. Rachel smiled at home, thinking she'd won. Henry would get the heart, Grace would fade away, and Thomas would stay hers. But the thread between Grace and Thomas tightened, pulling them closer, while Sam's fragile life hung in the balance, waiting for a miracle only love could bring. The moon hung full and bright over Ashwood, Oregon, casting a silver glow across the quiet town. Grace Delaney sat by Samuel's bedside in their small apartment, her hand resting on his as he slept. His breathing was shallow, a reminder of the clock ticking down. 1 month, Dr. Ellis had said, maybe less. She'd given up the donor heart for Henry Monroe, trusting Rachel Monroe's promise of $300,000 to find another. But doubt gnawed at her. The money hadn't come, and Sam's condition worsened. She touched the jade heart necklace at her throat, whispering, "Hold on, Sam. Mommy's fighting for you." Across town, Thomas Grayson stood in his office at Grayson Enterprises, the moonlight streaming through the window. He held a grainy photo from the Ashwood Inn, taken 5 years ago by a security camera. It showed the lobby where he'd been saved, a blurry figure leaning over him. No face, but the memory sharpened with every passing day. The woman's voice, soft and steady, the birthmark, a wing on her shoulder. He'd asked Rachel about that night again, and her story felt rehearsed, hollow. She'd waved the jade necklace in his face, saying, "I saved you, Thomas. That's all you need to know." But it didn't fit. The woman in his dream didn't match Rachel's sharp edges. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. He answered, cautious. "Mr. Grayson, it's Tim from the hospital. I've got something you need to see. Meet me tonight, parking lot, 10 o'clock. Thomas frowned. "What's this about?" Tim's voice dropped. "Your wife and the heart. Just come." Thomas grabbed his coat, his pulse racing. He didn't know Tim, a low-level nurse, but the urgency pulled him out the door. At 10, Thomas parked near the hospital, the moon lighting the empty lot. Tim approached, nervous, holding a phone. "I recorded this. Couldn't live with it anymore." He played a video, the screen flickering. Rachel's voice cut through, cold and clear. "Dump that heart. I don't care where, Henry's fine, but Grace can't have it. Do it, or you're done." The clip ended, a trash bin in the background. Thomas's hands clenched. "She threw it away?" Tim nodded. "Last week. Paid me to keep quiet. I'm sorry." Thomas stared at the moon, rage boiling. Rachel had lied. She'd cost a child's life to keep her secret. He drove home, the video replaying in his mind. Rachel sat in the living room, sipping wine, Henry asleep upstairs. Thomas stormed in, slamming the phone on the table. "Explain this." She glanced at the screen, her face paling, but she recovered fast. "It's fake, Thomas. Someone's framing me." He stepped closer, voice low. "I found the inn records 5 years ago. You weren't there. The woman who saved me had a birthmark, a wing on her shoulder. You don't." Rachel clutched the jade necklace, her lifeline. "I saved you. This proves it." Thomas shook his head. "You stole it. From her, Grace, wasn't it?" Rachel's eyes widened, but she laughed, sharp and brittle. "Grace? That nobody? You're crazy." Thomas grabbed the necklace, yanking it free. "I'm done with your lies. You threw away a heart, Rachel. A child's chance. Get out." She stood defiant. "And Henry?" Thomas softened, glancing upstairs. "He's not mine, is he? But I'll raise him. He's innocent." "You're not. Leave." Rachel glared, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. Thomas sank onto the couch, the necklace cold in his hand. Grace. It had to be her. He drove to the hospital, the moon guiding him. Sam was there, admitted after his chest pain worsened. Grace sat in the waiting room, her face etched with worry. Thomas approached, kneeling before her. "Grace, I need to know something." She looked up, startled. "Sir?" He took a breath, holding out the necklace. 5 years ago, a woman saved me at the Ashwood Inn. She had a birthmark like a wing on her shoulder. Was it you? Grace froze, her hand drifting to her shoulder. "How did you—" She pulled her sleeve back, revealing the mark, faint but unmistakable. Thomas's breath caught. "It was you. All this time." Grace pulled away, tears brimming. "I didn't want anything from you. I just helped and left. I didn't know who you were." Thomas gripped her hand, gentle but firm. "Rachel took your necklace, lied to me, married me, and she threw away Sam's heart to keep it secret." Grace gasped, her voice breaking. She what? Thomas nodded, guilt heavy in his eyes. I didn't know. But I'm fixing it. I've called an international donor network, every contact I have. Money's no issue. Sam's getting a heart, I promise. Grace stared, torn between anger and hope. Why should I trust you, after everything? Thomas met her gaze, unwavering. Because I've been looking for you for 5 years. Not just to thank you, but because you changed me that night. I didn't know about Sam, about us. Let me make it right. Grace's tears fell, her resolve crumbling. He's all I have, she whispered. Thomas squeezed her hand. He's not all you have anymore. I'm here, Grace, for you, for him. Dr. Ellis emerged, interrupting. Grace, Sam's stable, but we need that heart soon. Days, not weeks. Thomas stood. It's coming. I've got people working on it, fast as humanly possible. Grace looked at him, a flicker of trust igniting. Thank you, she said, soft but real. Thomas nodded, stepping back. I'll be back tomorrow. Rest, Grace. You're not alone now. He left, the moonlight framing his determined stride. Grace sat by Sam's bed, watching him sleep. She brushed his curls, whispering, Hold on, baby. Help's coming. Thomas drove home, calling his contacts. Find me a heart, compatible with a 5-year-old congenital defect. I don't care what it costs, now. He hung up, staring at the necklace in his palm. Grace's necklace. Her heart. He'd lost her once. He wouldn't lose her again. Rachel checked into a hotel, fuming. She'd lost Thomas, but not everything. She'd fight for Henry, for her share of the wealth. She didn't know Thomas had already decided Henry's future, a future without her lies. Back at the hospital, Grace traced Sam's hand, hope battling fear. Thomas's words echoed, I'm here. She didn't want to believe him, not yet. But under the moonlight something shifted, a promise, fragile but growing, that love might find a way. Thomas stood outside, looking up at the hospital window. He didn't know if Grace would forgive him, if Sam would make it. But he knew one thing. That night 5 years ago wasn't just chance, it was fate. And now, with the truth laid bare, he'd fight for the family he'd unknowingly left behind. The first light of dawn crept over Ashwood, Oregon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. Inside the hospital, Grace Delaney sat by Samuel's bedside, her hand clasped around his. The past few days had been a blur since Thomas Grayson's promise under the moonlight. He'd vowed to find a heart for Sam, using every resource at his disposal. Grace had barely slept, her hope fragile but growing. She looked at Sam, his small face peaceful despite the tubes and You're so strong, she whispered, brushing his curls. The jade heart necklace gleamed at her throat, a quiet anchor through the storm. Thomas had worked tirelessly, his phone buzzing with calls to donor networks across the country. By midnight, he'd gotten word. A heart compatible with Sam's condition was on its way from Seattle, rushed by private jet. He'd paid every fee, called in every favor, driven by a need to right the wrongs of 5 years. Now, as the sun rose, he paced the hospital hallway, waiting for Dr. Ellis's update. Grace glanced up as Thomas approached, his green eyes tired but bright. Any news? She asked, voice soft. He nodded, a smile breaking through. It's here. They're prepping him now. He's going to be okay, Grace. Her breath hitched, tears spilling. Really? Thomas knelt beside her, taking her hand. Really? The surgery took hours, each minute stretching into eternity. Grace sat in the waiting room, Thomas beside her. He didn't speak much, just stayed, his presence a steady comfort. She stole glances at him, the man she'd saved 5 years ago, now saving her world. When Dr. Ellis finally emerged, his smile said it all. It went perfectly. Sam's stable. He's waking up soon. Grace covered her mouth, sobbing with relief. Thomas pulled her into a hug, his arms strong and warm. You did it, he murmured. She shook her head against his chest. We did it. In the recovery room, Sam opened his eyes, blinking at the light. Grace rushed to his side, kissing his forehead. Hey, baby, you're okay. Sam smiled weakly, his voice raspy. Mommy? Then he saw Thomas tilting his head. You're the star man, right? Thomas chuckled, stepping closer. I guess I am. Sam reached out, small hand trembling. Mommy said Daddy's a star. Are you him? Grace froze, her heart pounding. Thomas knelt, voice gentle. If you'll have me, Sam, I'd like to be. Sam grinned, nodding. Okay, Daddy Star. Grace's tears fell anew, a mix of joy and wonder. Thomas looked at her, his eyes asking a silent question. She nodded, a shy smile breaking through. He's right. You're here now. Thomas took her hand, pressing the jade necklace into her palm. This is yours, always was. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. Grace closed her fingers around it, her voice steady. You're here now. That's enough. They sat together, watching Sam drift back to sleep, a family forming in the quiet dawn. Rachel Monroe's world had unraveled. After Thomas kicked her out, she'd fought for Henry, her leverage to stay in his life. But Thomas met her at a lawyer's office the next day, papers in hand. Sign this, he said, voice firm. You get a settlement, enough to start over. Henry stays with me. He deserves better than your lies. Rachel glared, but the evidence of her betrayal, the video, loomed large. She signed, taking the money and leaving Ashwood behind. Thomas kept his promise to Henry, vowing to raise him as his own, free of Rachel's shadow. A week later, Sam was strong enough to leave the hospital. Thomas drove Grace and Sam to a small house by Lake Ashwood, a place he'd bought years ago but never used. It's ours now, he said, opening the door. The house was simple, wood-paneled and warm, with a wide porch overlooking the water. Grace stepped inside, Sam clinging to her leg. It's pretty, Mommy, he said, running to the window. Thomas smiled, setting down their bag. Plenty of room for all of us. Grace turned to him, eyes soft. All of us? He nodded, gesturing upstairs. Henry's coming too. He needs a family. We can be that. Henry arrived that afternoon, shy but curious. Thomas introduced him to Sam, the boys eyeing each other. You like drawing? Sam asked, holding out a crayon. Henry nodded, taking it. They sat on the porch, sketching side by side, a bond forming in silence. Grace watched from the doorway, Thomas beside her. They'll be okay, he said, his hand brushing hers. She leaned into him, feeling the weight of years lift. We all will. Days turned to weeks, the house filling with life. Sam grew stronger, his laughter echoing through the rooms. Henry opened up, calling Thomas Dad one morning over breakfast. Grace found her place, cooking meals, tending the garden. Thomas started by the lake. One evening, as the sun dipped low, they sat on the porch, Sam and Henry chasing fireflies. Thomas turned to Grace, his voice low. I lost you once. I won't again. She met his gaze, heart full. You didn't lose me. You found me. He leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss, soft and sure, the first of many after 5 years apart. The next morning, dawn broke over the lake, light dancing on the water. Sam burst outside, waving a drawing. Look, Mommy, Daddy! Grace and Thomas joined him, the paper showing a family, 4 figures, under a starry sky. That's us, Sam said, pointing. You, me, Daddy Star, and Henry. Grace laughed, pulling him close. It's perfect, Sam. Thomas wrapped an arm around her, Henry at his side. Yeah, it is, he said, voice thick with emotion. Sam looked up, grinning. You're my brightest stars. Grace squeezed Thomas's hand, her tears happy now. And you're ours. They stood there, the lake stretching before them, dawn wrapping them in warmth. Rachel was gone, her shadow faded. Henry and Sam played, their laughter a song of new beginnings. Thomas pulled Grace closer, whispering, I promised I'd find you. Took me 5 years, but I kept it. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Worth the wait. The camera panned up, the sky a canvas of light, stars fading into day. A family, once lost, now whole, bathed in the glow of a love that conquered time. Grace looked at Thomas, then at the boys, her heart full. The jade necklace caught the light, a symbol of hope fulfilled. Sam ran to them, hugging their legs. "We're a real family now, right?" Thomas lifted him, laughing. "Always, kid." Henry joined in, and Grace wrapped her arms around them all. Dawn stretched wide, a promise kept, a future bright. In Ashwood, where rain once divided them, love had brought them home.